Hi, Sai and Sai here for Music Radar. Today we have got the Push 3 upgrade kit.
Yep.
But we're going to do this with a little bit of a twist, aren't we? We're going to attempt to build while you review it. I will build it, you review it.
So yeah, Ableton have been nice enough to supply us with one of these, which is an upgrade kit, which is, they've just released. Basically, the whole idea is that it means you can upgrade one of these, which is Ableton Push 3. I say one of these. This is the box. It's inside the box.
Yes.
Ableton Push 3. You can add a processor and a battery and some other things that will turn a MIDI controller push into a standalone capable push.
Yeah.
So we are going to, rather than, we're not going to do this as a tutorial, this is not us showing you this is how to do it perfectly. This is us, we've not opened this.
Yep,
we've not really looked at how to do it.
No.
We want to give you a realistic idea of how simple it is for two people who, let's be honest, are sort of borderline idiots.
Yeah, oh, completely.
How easy it is for us to upgrade a push, and can we do it in the same amount of time that it takes me to tell you my thoughts on Ableton Push 3?
Yes,
Cool.
and because we can't do two things at once, you'll do the talking, I'll do the building.
Yep, so this is a test of my ability to not ramble and your ability to multitask.
Yes.
And I think we're going to fail miserably, but let's see how it goes.
Okay, well, so should we just unbox this one?
Cool, so yeah, as I said, this is Ableton Push 3. So you can see from the sticker on here, this is a Push 3 which is without a processor. So let's recap what Push 3 is a little bit. Ableton Push, so Ableton Push is Ableton's official MIDI controller for their DAW Live. Push has been around for what, about 10 years now in various forms. This is Push 3. Technically, Ableton just call it Ableton Push, but it's the third generation version of it.
Yep.
And the big news with Push 3 when it arrived earlier this year was that it's available in two configurations. One, which is what we have here, is called a tethered configuration, which basically is a traditional MIDI controller. You need to plug it into a laptop or computer running Ableton Live in order for it to function at all. It's of no use without that.
Yep.
But for the first time, Push is also available with a built-in processor, battery, RAM, storage, Wi-Fi capabilities. And the whole idea of that is that basically you can now use one of those processor versions of Push completely standalone to run a version of Ableton Live entirely within the hardware without even needing to connect to like a power source or anything like that for a fully standalone workflow. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to turn this Push 3 without a processor into a Push with a processor. The idea being that, so Ableton announced these upgrade kits around the same time that Push 3 originally launched. And yeah, the idea being that you can buy a Push in a configuration without a processor. And then later, if you want to, you can then buy one of these upgrade kits and turn a basic version into a processor version.
That's the plan.
Do you want to have a look? Let's
unbox this and see what we've got inside.
So as we were saying, we haven't looked at this at all. We've kind of tried to avoid any information really. In theory, this should have everything we need in it, including tools and things.
Yeah, so on the side of the box it says, well, we can see, look, we have all of the pieces are lovely and named. There we go. Battery, looks big. Processor. The tools, very important. We've got some RAM. This is apparently a safety mat. There we go. I'm going to use that at some point. Put that there. Some silica gel, obviously. Don't need that. And the heatsink. That is everything right there. Now it says here, I can use the QR code, I can get my instructions, which, I might have to use that, but I'm hoping that I won't need to, because it should be quite straightforward.
Should we have a little look at this? Yeah, because on the side it's got a little bit of info about specifically what all of the elements in here are. So the processor is an Intel 11th Gen Core i3 processor with 8 gig of RAM and then 2 Wi-Fi antennas. Ooh. Then we've got a lithium iron phosphate battery, which is this one here. 256 gigabyte SSD hard drive.
That's in here with the processor.
That's in there with the processor.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we've got the heatsink, should be two processor screws, 5 heatsink screws, 1 battery screw, 1 backplate lifter, a screwdriver, and a protective mat being that there.
That's the mat.
So in theory, we have everything that we need to do this.
Theory.
Ableton have told us that this should take no more than 30 minutes.
Okay.
I'm hoping we can do it in less than that.
Yeah.
We're going to give it a go. So what we'll do now is let's take a little pause. We're going to unbox all of this so that you can then we can get it set up and then you can kind of watch how long it takes us to do this in real time.
Okay, so everything's unwrapped sort of. I don't want to take everything out of its package just yet because of dust and whatnot. But we have our mat ready. All the tools are out. I say tools, it's just one. And maybe one here. There's a back plate lifter. It's a couple of tools. Let's get started.
Cool. Do you want to have this?
I'll take this.
So it's worth saying as well, you probably can't see out of shot. We've got your
I've got my laptop
open there.
Yeah.
Ableton have on their website some pretty clear and nicely concise instructions for you to follow with some pretty, all with like little visuals to show you exactly what you're doing. So in theory, this is going to be kind of idiot-proof.
It should be idiot-proof, and I am the right person for the job, I think.
Yeah.
So I'll get cracking and you start talking.
All right.
All right, let's go.
So Push 3, we've been lucky to be using one for about 6 months now. When did they come out? May?
Yeah.
I want to say like May. Yeah. So we've been lucky enough to be using one for about 6 months. I'm a long-time live user, so I'll just tell you kind of straight off the back that the first 2 Push instruments, I say instrument, Ableton is always called Push an instrument.
Yes.
The first 2 versions, Push 1 was a collaboration with Akai, then Push 2 followed not that long after, which was the first one made entirely in-house and fully branded by Ableton. Mm-hmm. Ableton has always called these instruments. Both Push 1 and 2 were really great controllers. I really enjoyed using them. I will say that I kind of bounced off both a little bit.
Okay.
Not in terms of them not being useful or badly designed or anything, but I don't know about you, but I'm just one of those people who just finds it really difficult to not just go back to like just a mouse and keyboard and stuff using these things like
because they are really good at what they do.
Yeah, and I've been using Ableton Live since Live 4, I think, so quite a long time now, and I'm just kind of, you know how it is when you're using a piece of software, a DAW like that, it's a case of you get so used to just doing things like one way, particularly like if you've been using a mouse or if you've been just sat there with a laptop for years.
Yeah. And
it kind of takes quite a lot to pull you away from those habits. So that's kind of the benchmark I often find with a lot of these controllers when you're using them, is how much it actually persuades you that you're going to kind of, you know, build your workflow around this and keep using it. Like Ableton Push 1 and Push 2 were both really nicely designed controllers that you could do a lot with, but Push 3 is the first of them that I've actually found myself using properly as a long-term thing and actually kind of building what I'm doing around the controller and stuff. So the headline features for Push beyond what you're doing now, beyond the fact that we can kind of put a processor in it and stuff, is these MPE ready pads.
Yeah.
So like the MPE, for anyone who's not used it before, MPE stands for MIDI polyphonic expression, because it's changed what they stand for over the years due to wranglings and things.
Yes.
So MIDI polyphonic expression, the idea being that as opposed to like a classic MIDI message where you send a kind of a single note or a kind of single MIDI channel with a certain amount of expression in it. Instead, you're sending different MIDI channels for different notes played. And what that means is that you have all of these different levels of expression, like typically polyphonic pitch bend, polyphonic aftertouch, glide, and things like that.
Sorry, while you're talking,
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going to interject.
No, you interject whenever
Very
you need.
clever. They've got this little key here, the back plate lifter, and it's instead of you having to like dig your fingernails into the sides, you just jammy that into one of the screw points, and then away you go.
That was a nice
It's
touch.
out. Which, spoiler alert, that's where the heatsink's going to go later on, because I looked ahead. I probably shouldn't, but
You've had a
there
quick
we
scan
go.
ahead,
I had
seen
a
what
little
we're
scan
doing.
ahead, yeah.
So this is what we got at...
It's proper dust central. I think already the dust has just gone. But yeah, this is the innards.
It's the innards. What are you putting in first?
According to this, it is the processor that I'm going in first, which is a very combined, all-in-one affair. We have, I didn't realise this, I thought it was all going to be separate, but the SSD, the Wi-Fi antennas, 2 of them, and the processor are all in one handy little package. There we go, that's it there. So I'm going to insert that in.
Pretty neat looking.
Pretty neat looking. Sorry,
Yep.
carry on.
What were we saying? MPE. So
Yes.
MPE control. So these pads, the pads which we can't see at the moment because we're looking at the back, obviously. Those MPE pads are actually really nice, and they were the things that I think really makes Push 3 stand out compared to a lot of different pad-based controllers we've used in the past. The thing about those pads is that because you've got those extra levels of expression, we're just talking over the fact that you've glossing over the fact that you're trying to put that in upside down. It's fine. Because you've got those extra levels of expression from those pads, which work really nicely with a lot of Ableton's newer instruments that have been kind of upgraded for MPE. Particularly, you've got the Drift synth, which was added earlier this year, and then you've got Meld, which is the one in the forthcoming Live 12, which is out in public beta now.
Yeah.
Those are synths like kind of really built around the ability to use these extra levels of expression.
Yeah.
And because of that, this is the first time that I've actually kind of would concede that the whole idea of discussing Push as an instrument.
Yeah. Now it makes sense.
It makes a little bit more sense, yeah. It always before kind of seemed a bit like kind of a bit of hyperbole.
Yeah.
This idea of like, you know, talking about something being an instrument where it's basically just a MIDI
controller.
controller.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, before you're putting a processor in, you are still effectively just playing with a MIDI controller, but those extra levels of expression do mean that you can realistically like learn to play synth patches in a way that's a bit more like the experience of like learning an instrument and learning the responses of that instrument and kind of the nuances and playing it a bit more like, you know, something like a piano or a guitar or something, rather than just interacting with a MIDI controller. Now, obviously, when you put the processor in and you can have those synths actually all running directly within the box, it kind of brings that whole instrument idea to life even more, particularly because you can kind of take it on stage, take it out to jam with people. And yeah, you can suddenly start treating Push not necessarily just like a DAW controller or like a kind of production thing. You can act as if it's, you know, it's something that's creating sounds within it. It's something that you're kind of learning to play, and you've got these kind of adaptable instruments within it. So it's the first time that I think that whole claim of saying it's an instrument has any real weight to it. So aside from that, like other aspects that we really like about Push, the workflow, the general workflow is really nice and tight. It's in terms of what it does for live, it kind of you can't do everything like that Ableton Live can do from the controller itself. Like particularly when it comes to things like deeper elements of like MIDI settings, of MIDI editing, and the main thing that you can't really do with Push at the moment is there's still no way that it really kind of meaningfully engages with like the arrangement view. So it's very much, you've got this pad grid and it's very much built around scenes and clip launching, which is obviously a major element of Ableton Live. But you know, if you're going to build your workflow around Push, it does benefit. It does mean that you'll benefit a lot if you kind of make use of those scenes and clips rather than going straight to the arrangement view, which is how quite a lot of people work.
Oh, sorry. That's fine. It's fine.
You're fine. You're fine.
That's
You're
right.
good.
That's right. It did
You're
say don't be afraid to apply a bit of pressure. I did. It's good. We're all right.
But yeah, but the ways that it does interact with live, I think it does it really, really nicely and really well. You've got the top level rotaries along the top, which you'll see when we turn it over. Those kind of control the live users will know that kind of most devices you can kind of have, you'll have 8 macro. A lot of them come with kind of 8 macro controls for kind of presets and things like that, or you can kind of just scroll and browse through most of the important parameters and elements of like most live devices, and that works really nicely, and it does really encourage you to kind of stay away from that whole mouse and keyboard workflow.
Yeah.
So in terms of like actual making use of it as a standalone device like this, so there's a lot that it really impressed us when we first started using it, like as a standalone thing. So what's actually going on with this processor is it runs a version of Live that is a like a Linux-based version.
Yes.
So within Push, what you're basically getting is it's kind of in essence like the full Ableton Live experience. So it's not, unlike some other kind of like DAW in a box things, it's not a kind of completely restricted version, and you're not restricted in terms of the amount of MIDI devices you can use. You're not restricted in terms of the amount of audio tracks you can use. But because you're kind of constrained by the controls and what you can control in Live, it's not quite the full in-depth version of Live, as in, again, you can't make use of the arrangement view very much. There's certain things when it comes to, say, setting up kind of sends and returns on drum racks and things like that, which you can't do from the standalone unit. Right. But you can kind of prepare some of these things in advance and kind of make use of those things. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of the experience, it's, I'd say, probably the slickest of the kind of DAW in a box setups we've used. So when we're talking about those things, we're talking about Push 3, we're talking about the current gen Akai MPCs, which are similar, like work in a similar way, that they can have them completely detached from a computer and make use of them like as a standalone setup. I'm pausing a little bit because I'm looking
slightly worried at the fact that when it came to seating in these Wi-Fi antennas, antennae, whatever you call it, the plural of, one of them seems to be quite proud here. This one does disappear. This one doesn't seem to want to go all the way in. Which is slightly worrying because I need to put the backplate on. So there is an element of, there we go, it's right.
There we go.
Right.
You're applying a bit of pressure, you got it?
Yeah. Don't be afraid, basically.
Don't be afraid to apply a bit of pressure.
I'm just too afraid. Sorry, Si, carry on. I'm nearly there as well, you know. I'm not far off.
You're not far off. All right, let's speed through this. So I think the big question it's worth asking is, how much is it worth getting Push 3 in a standalone configuration? So there's quite a big price difference. So you're looking at several £100, $700, and it's already a fairly expensive controller. So I think in the UK at the moment, you're looking at a price of around £700 to £800 for a Push 3 in its tethered without a processor setup. And then you're talking about another £500 to £600 for a version with a processor in it. This upgrade kit that we've got here is retailing for around 1,000 euros, I think. We'll check that and put it in the description down below. So you are talking quite a big outlay, and it's also worth saying that if you look at the individual elements you're getting at this. So you're getting an Intel i3 processor,
Yeah.
the SSD, the battery. I mean, in theory, if you were going to kind of completely be quite reductive about it and just look at the individual elements as if it was like, you know, buying things to spec up a PC or whatever.
It seems steep.
It seems fairly steep. It is obviously worth saying that, like, this has been a really smooth and easy process, and it's not a case of just buying individual elements. So
no, so
you're definitely paying for that simplicity and that design.
Yeah, I mean, our initial thoughts were that you were going to be buying. You could go to a reputable online store and buy a processor, buy the RAM, buy the SSD all separate, and it'd be fine to sort of upgrade that in that fashion. But actually, that's not possible because the SSD and the processor are all combined.
Yeah. So
Which it looks like the RAM is going to be easy to upgrade.
Yeah.
Which is something.
Yeah.
But the rest of it looks like it's all sort of a closed system.
And it's worth also pointing out that kind of Ableton have hinted that part of the idea of having this upgradable system is that you're spending a lot of money on Push 3 now, and obviously you don't want it to be something that is going to be obsolete within a couple of years.
Right.
So there's no official word from them about whether there will be opportunities to kind of upgrade elements in the future.
No.
But in theory, it means that, you know, if we're talking 5 years down the line, you're looking at new versions of Live that are significantly more demanding, or you just want the option to upgrade kind of elements like RAM and processors and stuff. There is the potential that Ableton could offer certain upgrades officially.
Yeah.
To kind of, you know,
and then
let you adapt your own push.
Yeah.
Whether that happens, who knows? Anyway, so the big question being, how much do we think it is worth paying for a processor within Push? So having used a processor-equipped Push for about 6 months now, I'll be honest, I personally don't use it that often.
Okay.
Without it being connected to a laptop anyway.
Right.
Which is because basically my main use case for these is like in a studio at home.
Yeah.
I make use of quite a lot of like hardware synths and things. One feature that's really nice on Push 3 is the fact that it's got the built-in interface anyway, so that you can record straight in, particularly even in standalone mode, but in either standalone or tethered mode as well. You've also got these ADAT controllers on the back, ADAT connectors on the back as well.
Yeah.
So you can expand it really easily. So I've got that set up at home. I've got it plugged into a bigger interface with lots of with some more pre's and ins and outs, so that we can kind of run hardware synths into it.
Oh, this is quite the sticky heat sink. The
sticky bit.
The sticky bit's actually coming off the plate. Should be right. Should be okay.
But anyway, because of that, kind of using it in a studio generally, I haven't found there's been that many times that I've been that inclined to unplug it and use it completely standalone. When we have used it like that, the experience is really fun and really really nicely designed and really fun. But you've kind of got to have a reason to want to do that if you're using it in a studio context, if you know what I mean. Because obviously, one of the main drawbacks from using it in a standalone mode is that although you've got all of Live's devices and you can make use of some but not all Max for Live devices, kind of depending on how they're set up and how they're designed, you can't use third-party plugins, so no VSTs, no AUs within it in standalone mode. So unless you're, you know, really desperate to be free from a laptop or away from a studio, having the convenience of being able to use your plugin library for the trade-off of, you know, having a small laptop with you, it's kind of worth doing it. All of that being said, though, I can definitely see a lot of use cases where having this processor version would be great. The main one being live performers. So obviously Ableton Live has been a really popular tool for electronic live performance for years, which is kind of the MO of why it was created originally.
Just so you know, I win.
You're done?
I've done.
There you go.
You're still going.
I'm still going.
Well, I won't cut you off. Let me just flip that over and just show you that. There we go. It's all done. Blah blah blah. And we'll plug it in a minute.
We'll plug it in
carry
a second.
on.
So yeah, Ableton Live. It's always been great for live performers, and that's been part of its MO for years, ever since it was first launched in Berlin around the turn of the millennium.
Yeah.
If you are running a Ableton-based live show, like firing off MIDI clips and like using samples and stuff, the idea of having that as a standalone thing is
brilliant.
In theory, amazing. It's not something we've tested personally because, like, neither of us are
not live
performers in that sense. But it's not difficult to imagine how much fun and how great that would be. Obviously, if you're touring as well, being able to kind of have everything set up and loaded in there would really help for just being able to chuck it in a backpack, get on a small flight.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things worth noting on that sense is that until the arrival of Live 12, one of my bugbears with the way that Push is set up is that these are great, these rotaries for controlling each track and jumping around like different instruments and tracks, but there's not really been a particularly easy top level way to say, I'm performing with this, like I want to be able to control a delay on one track with this while also, throwing in some effects or something like that, which would be ideal for like live performances. Live 12, which is currently in beta, has introduced this performance pack, which is a Max for Live based setup, which adds a lot of flexibility in the way that you can set these things up and would potentially will make it a lot easier for Push users to perform in that way and kind of create custom setups like that. The other thing that I could see it being a lot of fun for and make it worth having a processor within it is if you're someone who's, say, performing electronic parts in like a wider band and like you want to be able to jam and record things in like kind of in a rehearsal room or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can extend the ins and outs using like ADAT if you need to kind of plug into a studio away from your own studio, which is quite cool. It means in theory you can capture multiple tracks all within its standalone. So like if you're kind of recording on the go and that, doing things like that, there's a lot of potential for what you could do. But like, so coming back to that point, I would say, so for the general live user and day-to-day kind of, for want of a better word, bedroom producer types.
Sure, yeah.
I would say it's maybe not necessarily jumping in straight away with a processor-equipped version of Push, given the price difference.
The tethered version is adequate.
Yeah, but that's why this upgrade kit
exists.
The fact that it exists is a really nice touch. Obviously, you are paying a premium. Like, there's no kind of getting around that. It's already an expensive controller compared to rival things. It's not that there's not justification for that because it's really nicely designed. Build quality is excellent.
Yeah.
These pads are really nice.
Yeah. And I like the addition of the new, the jog wheel side by side thing. That's those sorts of additions.
And basically, as we've just seen, this upgrade kit is actually the design on it is nicely done to the point that it was really easy for us to do that.
I mean, I hardly read their instructions.
And you are paying for that design. It's up to you whether you think that's worth it. But the fact that it exists gives this really nice route that you can say you're a producer on the rise who likes the idea of getting Push and then suddenly gets to a point where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to start developing a live set. I want to move on from DJing, playing some stuff. It gives a route in for people to upgrade it. And the fact that it exists, and also, like we said, the fact that there's potential down the road that you might be able to get a better processor, get more RAM or whatever.
Yes.
In theory, adds to the longevity.
Yeah, and I'm all for kind of hardware upgrades and not sort of wasteful disposal of such good quality kit. So I think that side of it is a very good sign for the future.
If you're going to be spending somewhere between £800 to £900, £700-800 to £2,000 upwards, or however you end up investing in Push, you want something that's going to last for at least 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
You don't, and so the fact that you can, in theory, do that and it should be future proofed is
Fingers
good
crossed.
and big.
Fingers crossed. Also, fingers crossed does it actually work? Should we try and plug it in and see if it.
We're going to turn this on. We're probably going to need to upgrade the software and things like that.
Probably. So we'll take a little 5-minute doing that.
Let's take a 5-minute pause and let's see if this is all working.
Right. Okay, so we've dug out the PSU.
Yeah, which
Plugged
we
it
don't
in.
need, it's worth saying in theory, because there is a
No.
battery, but we don't know how much charge there is and we don't want it coming out halfway through this.
No. So let's just flick the switch. Yes.
Yeah, it's on.
Phew. Right, good. I'm also going to commit to this by.
So in theory, if you press that standalone button,
Boop.
we should now be able to go completely standalone.
Here we go.
So you're gonna boot this up, try and update it,
Yeah, I'm
connect to
gonna
Wi-Fi.
Connect to the Wi-Fi and then hopefully make things happen.
Yeah. While you're doing that,
Yeah.
let's sum up quickly
Quick
what
sum
we
up.
think of Push 3.
Pros and cons.
Pros and cons. Okay, so pros. Let's have 3 pros first. As we said originally, those pads. Those pads are really nice. The MPE. I've been a little bit on the fence with like how much I would use MPE on other things, mostly because I'm just crap at playing keys anyway, so I'm not really the person who's aimed at. But the expressive feel of those pads and also how easy it makes it to like play these expressive instruments.
Yeah. And
'Cause
how easy it is to actually like go into the settings and then sort of, mess about with the actual kind of physical part of each one.
Yeah.
That's really easy as well.
I've heard it's great for people who can actually kind of like play keys in terms of like, have the ability to be expressive and like that. But also for people like me and you who are maybe people who are more used to like working with sequencers and just messing around and things like that.
Pads and such.
It kind of gives you a no wrong answers way to like use those expressive things, which is great for like big ambient pads and soundscapes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one pro.
Yeah.
Also, connectivity along the back.
Yes.
So in both modes, as we've touched on, you've got 2 inputs, 2 outputs.
Yeah.
This ADAT connection, which means you can have up to, I think it's up to 10 inputs. I might be wrong on that.
Right.
We'll check the specs. I'm talking off the top of my head. Same sort of number of outputs. And there, as alongside the onboard ones, you've also got these pedal inputs, which can also work as CV outputs.
Yes.
So you can route CV to analog gear, which is really cool.
Okay, it has finally started up. I just noticed that a firmware warning popped up but then disappeared really quickly, so I'm not sure. It's asking me to connect up audio, speakers, whatnot.
We're not going to do right
Not
now.
doing right now. We can adjust volumes and such.
So this is all. This is what you get when you first open up Push, as we're saying, which is like a nice little introduction.
Yeah. Quick user
which teaches
guide.
you how to use all these pads and things like that. We're going to kind of skip through this because we've used it and we know how this stuff works.
Yeah.
But it provides a really nice little user beginning to get you up and running.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, update is finished.
So let's give that a go.
Turn it off.
But
and
it's
on
working
again.
anyway, so it's plugged in, it's working. Finishing what I was saying quickly. So yeah, connectivity. You've got lots of flexibility on there.
Mm-hmm.
It means that you kind of can adapt it to more situations than you have been with previous versions of Push.
Yeah.
It works really. It makes it nice to work with hardware. Obviously, you've got MIDI in and out, which you need to use the adapters with.
The adapters because it's the tiaras.
Yeah, but kind of it's all. There's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot you can do. It fits nicely into a studio setup, and it also works nicely if you want to take it out, potentially record people on the go, potentially control hardware synths or send CV out. So that's our second pro. Third pro is going to be what Ableton call continuity, which is basically the way that this standalone version of Push works with live on a desktop.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the make or break things for these DAW in a box systems. Like the idea of I want to take this out, I want to perform with it, or I want to capture things and create ideas. But then how easy is it to either send those ideas to live on your computer, or take something you've created on live and bring it out into the hardware. And live is able to set this up in a way that works really nicely.
Yeah.
So the Wi-Fi within here, you can basically connect to the same network that your desktop version of Live is on. Then Push appears basically in the browser along the left-hand side. You can kind of drag and drop instruments or projects. There's a few little awkward things like drum racks still. You can't save a drum rack with all of its samples in it. We've got a video we've created, we'll link to here, along with some other videos where we've kind of shown you how you can work around that.
Okay.
That's one little bugbear on that front, but generally, compared to things like the MPCs or Machine Plus, all of which work quite nicely in this way, but Push 3 is definitely the slickest of that kind of desktop to standalone continuity.
Yeah, back and forth.
And like it's nice that you can set things up, like for example, follow actions. So follow actions, which are something that you can make clips work to do things like, you know, jump to the next clip or loop for a certain amount of times, which are great for live performances. You can't access those and set them up on Push itself, but you can set them up in live on desktop and bring a project into Push, which is great for the kind of live performance. And that continuity makes it really easy to kind of jump back and forth and set those things up. So that's another feature that we really like.
So that's your 3 pros.
3 pros. Yep.
Now the 3 not so pros. What doesn't enamour you by Push 3?
So, as I've said, which is kind of being fixed in to an extent in Live 12, is the fact that it's not that flexible to set up these rotaries for like proper top level control and it's not quite as flexible in that way as I'd like it to be. I'll level with you, I've not used Live 12 enough to the performance pack that's come out recently to deliver a verdict on that. From what I've seen from demos, it looks like it's got a lot of potential to sort that out and to open that up a bit. So fingers crossed that that kind of addresses that to an extent. So number 2 on our cons is again that price, which I'm not going to say it's overpriced, because I think it's a quality bit of kit. And you can, you know, build your whole workflow around it. It's definitely, you know, the upper end of the pricing spectrum. Which I don't think anyone's, you know, going to be surprised about. It is what it is. Ableton's Push devices have always been like, you know, fairly expensive for controllers. And again, this is fairly expensive for a controller. And also, compared to those MPCs that we've mentioned before, even the kind of the standalone version of Push 3, ignoring kind of comparative specs, you can get a standalone MPC for considerably cheaper. So if you're, you know, after a DAW in a box like thing, there are cheaper ways to do it.
Beat making on all that. No MPE though.
No, and I mean, like I said, I'm definitely not arguing that Push isn't worth the money, but what I would say is that it definitely opens up this whole market for people who maybe like the idea of having a live controller, and particularly a kind of official and very slick one like this, but don't necessarily need some of these features. So there's a lot of things on here, even ignoring the processor version. So the tethered version of Push, you've got a built-in audio interface, you've got that connectivity, which, like I said, is a big pro, but it's also something that if you are just using it as a controller in your own studio, you've probably already got an interface. You might have all of your synths and hardware connected in a way that you really like. You might not necessarily need that. MPE, again, I love how these pads work. They're really fun, really expressive, turns it into an instrument, but for some people, they just don't need that. So, you know, it opens up this gap for potentially people who like the idea of Push and like the idea of that, of having that control over live, but maybe don't need to spend that amount of money and don't need some of the features. Whether that means that, you know, Ableton will bring out some sort of Push Mini in the future, who knows? There's definitely feels like that there's a market for that. If not, You've got things like Akai's APC
64.
64,
Yeah.
which they recently relaunched, which is, I think, around the £300 mark off the top of my head.
Cool, yeah.
Somewhere, it's in that region anyway, so
Yeah.
it's like considerably cheaper. Doesn't have MPE, does have some kind of like a lot of touch strips,
Yeah,
some interesting things.
Lots of sort of performative kind of hands-on.
And then similarly,
features,
you've got Novation's launch range, so the Launch Pad Pro, all the little launch minis, launch keys or whatever, which work really nicely with Live and range from kind of mid-level to really cheap. So there is a lot of stuff out there for people who like the idea of like a nice slick Live controller, but don't want to spend on Push.
No, sure.
So you've got this up and running now,
I have.
and it looks like
Is that 2 Pro? Did you do 3 cons?
I did two.
Did 2?
Two. I haven't really got a third one.
Oh, okay.
I like it a lot.
Okay, that's
I
cool.
haven't really got a third con.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. You don't have to. I like neat.
Yeah.
You've gone 3 and 2. It's fine. I'm not going to be bothered. You're right. I have managed to do this, not cock it up, and it is quicker than it takes to do the review. You can update one quicker than that. So, yeah.
Yeah, we've waffled a lot more than it's taking you to actually do that. So,
And I can multitask.
Yeah.
Sort of.
if you can do it, almost anyone can.
Almost.
Almost.
And I think we can call that the end, can't we?
Yeah.
Don't forget to do all the commenting. I'm sure there's something you disagree with, so fight out in the comments. Subscribe, comment, share, all that business.
We've got a few other, obviously we haven't demoed Push in this video,
No.
and we haven't shown some of the things we talked about. We do have,
Other
from when
videos
it
for that.
launched, we've got a nice walkthrough from Ableton themselves.
Yep.
We have done a stress test where we've shown how many devices and tracks
can
we
handle,
can handle in standalone. We've shown a bit of that continuity we've touched on. So we will link to
all that.
those,
Yeah.
find those below this video
Yeah.
for more.
Until then, we'll see you soon for some more gear chat. So see you later.
Thanks.